why prostitutes should be seen as victims.
Yeah.
And we talked about trafficking not only in the form of prostitution, but also there are many others, of course, and abuses. I mean, that's a blanket, I guess, statement. Any kind of trafficking is abusive,
exactly.
right?
But it's a human rights violation. According to the UN Protocol on Trafficking, it includes bringing them to armed conflict or bringing them to domestic servitude, involuntary servitude, slavery, or slavery-like practices.
So it doesn't have to be sexual in nature?
Not only.
Okay, like what then? What are from your studies?
For instance, they're brought to, well, one of the victims, I was immediately reminded, was brought to Taiwan to work as domestic helper. She was offered 15,000. They sold their carabao, you know, the usual story of migrant women. When she went there, she was not even paid, but she was made to work for 2 employers. She was not fed well, and also that's slavery-like conditions without pay, and, you know, being made to work up to the wee hours of the night.
So talagang abuse in so many different forms, I guess. And plus, I guess it's also then in some countries to physically punish them if they don't come up to par, you know, to the expectations of their employers, and that is abuse also.
Usually sexual punishment, you know, I mean, sexual abuse is what they suffer.
So there are many women out there who suffer abuses of all kinds, all at one shot, di ba? From one employer, pwede kayo sexually abuse, you know, parang to give you more work than you really deserve, and wala ka magawa. You're telling me none of these problems have gotten better, you know, as you've been doing this for 10 years, Jean. Is your work getting any easier?
That's a very difficult question. We were very happy with the passage of the law. Somehow we think that our work was made a little bit easier because it established what we were discussing, that women that are trafficked to prostitution are actually victims. But there's still the challenge for us to pass an anti-prostitution law.
Okay, what's the difference with what was passed and the anti-prostitution law?
The anti-prostitution law will remove the Vagrancy Act that still criminalizes the women, because some policemen still use this. And in the course of applying the Vagrancy Act, they're also abusing sexually the women, you know. So as not to jail them, they're going to ask the women for sexual favors, and they'll say, you know, just come to bed with me, and then I won't bring you to jail. And so it's it's abused by law enforcers, so as to get, you know, free sexual services from the women themselves.
That's just so difficult to imagine.
There are still, it is difficult. When I saw the photos that the police even submit to fiscals to prove that the women are there habitually, you know, they take pictures of them using the women. It's so, it's ridiculous.
Wow.
So it's gotten a little, we have victories, but we still have a lot of challenges ahead of us.
And how do you, I guess, what is your first move, or how do you intend to get where you want in terms of the, you know, the support that you get legally and the support that you get from the government, for example? Is there anything that, what are your programs?
Yeah, one of our inspiring stories that we are able to educate a lot of young men in gender camps on sexuality, gender issues, and prostitution. And the idea of this is precisely to bring down the number of men who are constituting the demand side of trafficking for prostitution, so that less of them will be buying women, will be abusing them, raping them, or beating them up, because unfortunately the majority of the perpetrators are men. It's inspiring. We think that we're moving ahead because there are more young men. 300 have graduated from our camps, and they are now all advocates against prostitution.
So they just spread the word, and they pay it forward. So again, it's supply and demand. So the less people who want it, also that should somehow help the situation. We didn't even get to cover, because it's Women's Month, but we will just mention that it is also a crime against males, especially little boys, I guess. There is such a thing also. And
boys are also victims.
And is that also are those numbers also growing alarmingly?
Yes, because they're taking different forms, the way they are victimizing the boys as well. You know, from the streets, getting them and making them bring them to customers and all, using the cell phones,
of course,
information technology.
When you started 10 years ago, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. There was not the internet. They didn't have the cell phones. They weren't able to take pictures. This adds a new dimension to your work, doesn't it?
Yes, and young men and also women are being used via the webcam by customers from Europe and also the U.S. And you know, the vulnerability of young women, especially, and also boys are being exploited.
Makes it easier for them.
Yeah.
So when you wake up on a good day and you say to yourself, I'm getting somewhere, I have some good news to share. Share it naman with me today, since it's almost the end of Women's Month. Is there something good besides the 300 men coming out of your camp?
Right.
Some good news from your end about maybe some kind of improvement in the traffic situation for Filipino women?
You know, Chiki, every day is a good day for us when we wake up. We're always unemotional. We're always hopeful that, you know, we're moving even just inch by inch in our work. The fact that survivors of trafficking for prostitution are organizing themselves alongside us, and they're also finding their voices and speaking out, fighting for the passage of an anti-prostitution bill. It encourages us. I think it's really heartening to see the used to victims come out, and as leaders also speaking the way I would speak, and also talking to the young men so that they'll stop, you know, emulating the older men who are buying women in prostitution.
You do empower them, and that's good news.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jean,
Thank
for
you,
sharing all that information with us. Thank you. And that was Jean Enriquez, Executive Director of the
Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, Asia Pacific.
There you are. AP was Asia Pacific, right? Thanks so much, Jean.
Thank you.
There has been some good news on the women's drive up the corporate ladder this time, but it might also be time to do a reality check when it comes to the rat race, and we will take that up. We'll take up women and labor next. You're watching Karina Today.